Welcome back to Malamic Art. This is Mikki, and I'm here to try to demystify all of this stuff that's on these labels of these paints. The first thing that you look at is the name brand and the color. So you basically want a particular color in a sort of form that you're working with. And we have watercolor, and I have one gouache here, and these are oils. And they all pretty much adhere to the same sort of format on their labeling. You get your brand name, which is somewhere usually pretty clear. Sometimes it's not. See, the whole bean is pretty tiny here for their gouache. And then you have the name of the color, and you can usually find that pretty quickly. And sometimes there's different languages, which is great. So you can find that pretty quickly. This one you can't find it very quickly because it's such tiny print. But anyway, so then you have sometimes the number of the color, or the company wants to make it easier for themselves, and they number their colors to find them quickly. And then you find that some of them have the pigment number right on the front. So the pigment numbers are usually P for a pigment, which is a compound or a chemical composition of some sort which makes the color, like an iron oxide makes a actual pigment that they suspend in a binder. And back in the old days, they used honey for watercolor and some kind of walnut oil for oils. And now they use linseed oil, and they use other kind of binders for watercolor, and they use what's called gum arabic, and Core actually uses a synthetic aquazol. And I'm not really sure what they use for gouache, but I think it's something along the same. And you have just all these different binders, and back in the day they even used eggs and milk and all sorts of stuff. But now that that we're have more or less more technology, we want light fastness, and we want to know these will last and how the quality and everything. So they put it through a ASTM, which is American Standard Test Measure. And they test for quality and light fastness, or quality of the light fastness. I'm not really clear as to what exactly they do, but you'll find their ratings right here on the back. And sometimes it's the ACMI, which is the Art Creative Materials Institute. And they test for toxicity and safeness. So this little circle, if you see it, sometimes you don't, sometimes you'll see it just worded as ASTM right here. It conforms to ASTM standards. And sometimes you'll see it in the seal. So you'll see two little seals here. And sometimes you'll see it AP non-toxic. And then you'll see CL, which means it has some risk to it, some toxicity to it. So it's always nice to kind of check to see the toxicity. You don't want your pets or your kids getting a hold of those. And honestly, you can get this paint on you. The AP ones are safe, but it's not good to ingest, obviously. So there are some rules that come with the AP as well. So that's what those little seals are. Let's see. So then you have a series. There's it says series 2 here. It says, I don't see a series on this one. Here's a series 3, and this is a student grade, so I'm not sure. This one has a permanence, which means that how is this, the film and the chemical stability of the paint, how long will that last? Will it be light fast? So this is an A. A is actually permanent, so it's not the best. The best is actually AA, which is extremely permanent. The lesser, even lesser than A are B, and I've only seen AA, A, and B. B is moderately durable. So there's that to look for oil. And sometimes they just write it all out. Like this particular one just writes out light fastness is 1, and that equals excellent. Light fastness is how long are these colors going to stay the same as when they, dried onto your paper, canvas, etc. Will they change? Will they fade? That's light fastness. So when you're looking at the back and it says LF, or let's see, light fastness, in America, light fastness 1 through, these Roman numerals they use, 1 through 5. 1 is the best light fastness. The V or a 5 is not as light fast. So you're going to want to look for the 1. And the British or blue wool scale, it's opposite, with 7 or 8 being excellent light fastness and 1 being the worst. So you may have heard something called fugitive paint. So fugitive paint would be the ones that fade or change over time, which would be in America the 4 or 5s, or in British it would be the 1 would be the worst. So moving on, I was getting to series. Okay, so you'll see series 2, series 3. I totally went off the track, didn't I? That's okay. So series means how expensive is this paint to make? How much is it, to buy? So you'll find a series 1 will be a cheaper within their company, and a series, I've seen all the way to 7 being very, very, very expensive to buy. So this is a series 2, a series 3. I don't even know. I've got a series 1 here, so 1 would be the cheaper one of these. Excuse me. And I don't know. Sometimes you'll find that your tubes, which are made in Japan, or will not have very clear ratings. But you'll see here, actually, I don't know if I can zoom in, that there is an A right there. So that means that this would be one of the cheaper ones, I would assume, because A being the first letter of others. Let's see. And I can't find a series on this oil. It's got light fastness 1, excellent. So that's all I see on that one. This one actually has quite a lot. The permanence is A, which is right of the middle grade. Nope, I don't see anything else, but I do see a pigment number on the back here. So I guess we can talk about the pigment number more. The pigment is a number of a certain composition they create, they being this company, or whoever makes the pigments, the pigment gods. And it's a chemical composition that is created from either oxidization or chemically or something, and it all kind of produces these colors, and that's why they need to do these toxicity labels, because sometimes the chemicals they use are toxic. So if they are toxic, get some, if you're really worried about it, get some plastic gloves or wash your hands immediately after with soap and water. But the pigments make them what they are, and whatever they do to manipulate the pigment, it makes the color change. And sometimes the pigment looks different from one to the other. And let's see if I can find one over here. I don't know if I have any that are the exact same here. Ultramarine Deep. So these are both the same. Ultramarine Deep is usually PB29. So they look a little bit different. This is Core and this is Snellier. That's really tough to show you because those aren't exactly the same. So I believe this one's this PY3 also. Sometimes there's just a little slight difference between different pigments. And that's why people buy different brands, because they like one pigment color by this company rather than that color by that company. So this is why we do all these experiments, to see which color is the best, which works well. And we put them through the rigors. Like I do swatch tests on my paints to figure out, you know, which lift from the paper, which travel across suspended in water. So it's good to know what you're working with in order to create something so it's not unpredictable, so you have more control over your paint. So next we're on to like transparency codes. There's all these weird, like there's squares, there's squares with a line through it with half of it filled, and there's squares with completely filled. This is testing the transparency. Now usually when I do a swatch test I want to find out which ones are completely clear and which ones are these, you know, I put paint over this black line so you can see that the paint has laid on top of it and you can't really see through it. So that would be semi-transparent. And so this would, the completely open box is transparent, or T. The one with the line through it is semi-transparent, or ST. The ones with the half filled in box are semi-opaque, or SO. And of course the completely filled in would be completely opaque, which would completely cover that black line. Now oils kind of do theirs a little bit different. They do the transparent. They do semi-transparent this way. They fill in the bottom of the box. And sometimes they do semi-opaque with the top of the box filled up. So it kind of just, you might want to just take a look at, you know, how this particular company is doing their little symbols. And the other thing you may find is that there's an S on the back, or a G. An S is for a paint that is staining. And when it's staining and you're a watercolorist, well, if you get a brush and you try to scrub it, let me get some here. This one's been dry for a very long time. I'm trying to lift the paint off of the paper to see more of the paper so I can get a highlight. And this one's really staining, so I can't hardly do it. So the staining would be, ratings would be not staining. And this would be semi-staining. And then this one would be staining. So this one is semi-staining. It's either the top half of the box is filled or the bottom. So that is what they do with that. And I think we're pretty good with everything now. If you have any questions about this, you know, these labels, just put it in the comments below, and I will totally fill you in. The other things that are more vague are the standard sizes. Like Sometimes they do 5 mil, sometimes they do 7 mils, and that's the, how much they fill up their tubes. I've seen watercolor tubes anywhere from 5 milliliters all the way to 37 milliliters, which are this size. And oils, I've seen them from like, I don't know, somewhere around like a 18 to 20 milliliters, like a little test size oil tubes, all the way up to like 200 mil, which are these big gargantuan things. Hold on. I'll show you. I have one right here. So then we would have these big, huge tubes. So I don't really like to show this because this is an ivory black. I bought this a long time ago. And ivory black is made with a pigment of charred bones. and and the reason why they say ivory is back in the day they did use elephant tusks to char and make this paint. And I hate showing this, but I would never buy this ever again. I would use another a black called Mars Black. Much better, or lamp black, which is another black that's just as good. So anyway, there's that. So oil also does cans, the cans of oil paint. So you can buy them all the way up to like big, huge can sizes, from anywhere from 750 milliliter cans to however you want to just throw your money at paint. So you'll usually see the ounces right at the bottom of the tube. And sometimes you'll see an expiration date at the bottom, or sort of like this particular pigments lot, what they did, a number signifying that this particular group of paint was made this day, and that's the paint that you get. And sometimes it's like numbers, you have no idea what that means. So well, that's about it. That's all I've got for this stuff. I think I've been through everything. So if you see, this little seal here, that it's been looked at. This particular one doesn't have any pigment information on it. So sometimes paints are new and they need to go through the through some tests within the company or without the company, to figure out what the particular pigment needs to be called, and if it's going to be light fast, and that takes some time. So sometimes you'll see pigment has an NR, but they've given all the other information here, which is series 2, and it's a semi-opaque, and or the T, so maybe this means to this company that it's semi-transparent. Opaque, transparent opaque, I don't know. When I tested this, it was semi-transparent to me, so it's always good to know what's on the label. Okay, well, thanks for joining me, and please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.